Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Well, it's your old pal Jake, and today is Indictment Day. Actually, it's Arraignment Day. He's already been indicted. It's Arraignment Day. That means Donald Trump is going to get told by a judge what's going to happen next. This is the same judge. He's already threatened. He did the usual racist ass thing. He called the judge biased ahead of time, just like a Trump hater. Whatever, doesn't matter. The thing is, you can't pick as a criminal defendant, which Trump is. You can't just pick your judge. You have to. If you're going to make an objection like Trump has made, you have to have a serious reason, and it requires some effort to prove. But as we're going to demonstrate in the various clips and articles today, Trump has no ability to control himself to his legal detriment. It's amazing. I think this is going to be perhaps the world's easiest trial for the prosecutor. In addition, an ex-chief of staff for the GOP, staffer, has been killed while fleeing justice. The FBI appears to have shot and killed that defendant we were talking about just last week, who was on the run, who skipped out on trials or on a court appearance. We're now seeing the other side of that. This is for former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. Their former chief of staff Roy McGrath has died after a nationwide manhunt for him resulted in him apparently getting into a confrontation with the FBI. Wild times, folks. Reality is starting to set in, and boy, is it grim. What can I say? We warned him. Don't run from... I'm not even going to... We'll read the article in a moment. And then, of course, Donald Trump straight up incriminated himself in an interview with Sean Hannity. It's making the rounds now, but this interview was last week, and he more or less abandoned every opportunity that Hannity gave him to say the correct thing regarding the documents case. But instead of saying the correct thing, what he said was, "No, I could take him. Yeah, I did take him." It's amazing. Let's crack into it. Let's have some fun with this, folks. Also, it being a 2 for Tuesday, yes, we are certainly going to stream now. We're certainly going to do the 8 o'clock stream. I'm going to try maybe to, I'm kidding. It would definitely. We're going to cover the live stream of Trump after he go to his arraignment and getting arraigned. It's gonna be a good day. Well, let's jump right into this little fish that chose to flee rather than face justice. So, an ex-chief of staff for Larry Hogan fled rather than face a series of charges relating to fraud. Some, my understanding, most actually, occurred while he did not work. Perhaps, maybe it's all. Well, let's just look at the article. Occurred when he was not, to be clear, working for Larry Hogan. But the article's on CNN Politics. Let's have a gander. Ex-Hogan chief of staff dies after confrontation with FBI attorney says, ooh, that's not good language to use. Very passive language when talking about police killing somebody. Look, I don't like the guy. It appears that the guy himself thought he was not innocent because he fled rather than have things heard out in court. But look, the FBI killed somebody. Let's be absolutely sure that the person put themselves in a position to be killed. And let's not sugarcoat it, because it appears that the FBI killed him. But let's look at their very passively worded article. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan's one-time chief of staff, Roy McGrath, has died after a nationwide manhunt for him ended Monday in a confrontation with the FBI in Knoxville, Tennessee. Oof, Tennessee's having a rough go of it, according to McGrath's attorney. The FBI has confirmed that Roy succumbed to the injuries inflicted earlier in the evening. It is a tragic ending to 3 weeks of uncertainty, Attorney Joseph Murtha told CNN in a statement. I think it's important to stress that Roy never wavered about his innocence. Well, he wavered enough to flee rather than face trial. Not sugarcoat that either. William Brennan, an attorney for McGrath's wife, also confirmed McGrath died at a Tennessee hospital after a confrontation with the FBI and told CNN that his client was absolutely distraught. I don't blame her. So look, police will do that. Yes, this is the FBI, but they still police. They do that. They'll like when they send a press release, they'll phrase it exactly like that. A criminal subject died after a confrontation or following a confrontation with officers at the corner of blah, 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 blah. And they know that journalists are loath to put anything in their own words if they have an official source, certainly. And so they'll use that wishy-washy language, which doesn't quite say what happened. It doesn't quite. And that's wrong. The journalists shouldn't do that because it's an old trick used by the cops to cover up killings. To normalize them, to make them seem less like a decision of the people who are carrying guns in our name. And I'm sure, this is a GOP nutball. In the modern Republican Party, in Tennessee no less. I'm sure this guy was a wacko. Doesn't change the fact that police should not use that wording, and the press should not use the police's wording, or the FBI's wording in this case. That just removes responsibility for the death. The FBI said in a statement earlier Monday that it was reviewing an agent-involved shooting. It's no different than officer-involved shooting. Again, it washes it out, which occurred at approximately 6:30 p.m. on Monday, April 3rd, 2023. During the arrest, the subject, Roy McGrath, sustained an injury and was transported to the hospital. Well, all right, this is very interesting. So, confrontation. It sounds like this wasn't a shootout, because if they would have said, or if they would have killed this guy and they had done so because they returned fire after getting shot at, I promise you, they would have, well, I don't know. I would assume, I suppose. I shouldn't promise it. I would assume that what they would do is say, he shot at us. Dude shot at us. Here's the casings. Here's the yada, yada, yada. So what happened? Was he fleeing and they wrestled around and we had a Die Hard happen? Guy's neck broke at the bottom of the stairs? I don't know. Look down just a paragraph, Jake. It appears that there is some answers here. The Bureau, the statement said, takes all shooting incidents involving our agents or Now, see... So it takes all shooting incidents involving our agents or task force members seriously. In accordance with FBI policy, the The shooting incident is under investigation by the FBI's Inspection Division. They're still not saying that the guy shot at FBI agents. This is interesting. The Bureau did not provide any additional details on the arrest. CNN previously reported that McGrath, who served as the top aide to Hogan, a Republican, for a few months during the summer of 2020, faced charges related to an alleged scheme to bilk Maryland out of more than $276,000. McGrath pleaded not guilty to all the charges and was released on bond, the U.S. Marshal Service said in a statement last month. Okay, so stealing $276,000 is a bad thing to do. Literally. Well, what have I said? I've said literally. The goal of Republicans is to use the positions we allow them to have to thieve from the American people. Here's this guy doing a shorter version of that. Just literally doing that on its face. I think McGrath was a despicable human being. I do not believe that $276,000 is worth killing somebody over. I don't care that he was a despicable person. That ain't worth a human life. Even a garbage human life. It's not worth it. Keep the money. For God's sake. I'm not sure why they killed him, though. It doesn't sound like this is a bizarre arrest. I'm not sure what happened here. Let's keep reading. Maybe we'll get more answers. I'm going to power through the rest of this puppy. CNN previously said that an arrest warrant had been issued for him in March after he failed to appear for his scheduled trial in Baltimore. To be fair, I guess that it was a guy running from very serious charges. He could be considered dangerous, but McGrath was indicted by a federal grand jury in October 2021 on charges that he defrauded the Maryland Environmental Service, a state-operated corporation where he served as executive director. Yeah, he was the boss there before joining Hogan's office of 233, yada, yada, severance payment by falsely telling them that the governor was aware of and approved the payment, according to the Justice Department. We'll see if the governor was indeed not aware of that. The indictment also alleged that McGrath directed MES funds to an art museum for which he was a member of the board of directors, so as to avoid paying for a pledge out of his own pocket, defrauded MES to pay for a tuition expense more than blah, 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 blah. So a bunch of fraud. I don't want to keep dunking on this guy. McGrath was initially charged with wire fraud. I mean, just if there's no point. Yeah, a bunch of wire fraud. On the state level, he faced felony theft charges, literally thieving, felony theft charges, and a violation of the state's wiretap law, the Justice Department said. The FBI had offered a $10,000 reward. Okay. I want to know what happened with this guy. Truly. We insist on certain behavior, if we insist on certain levels of decency from our police, then we insist upon it for everybody. I really want to know, despite the shadow of Trump today, I want to know, why did this guy have to die? Why was he killed? What the hell happened? We truly need answers on this. MAGA psychos, we don't get along on much, but you gotta want answers here too. For once, you're right to be suspicious. FBI, he's a criminal from the GOP, so I assume you loved this guy. So he killed one of yours, the FBI. Let's get some answers. You can certainly write the FBI and ask them to release all the information they can. What investigation are they worried about spoiling at this point? Guy's dead. Not going to be a court case. How could there be? How could he defend himself? Release all the information. Investigation's over. Release it. Not enough. We need to know the exact manner of this person's death. How does a former, chief of staff, how does he wind up getting killed? Shot, it would seem, although they don't say that, but yeah. Connect the dots there. It was a shooting incident. The guy died. Shot, presumably, by the FBI. How does that happen? Did he... Either way, we need to know. Either the FBI got overzealous, in which case, even though I don't like the guy that they got overzealous with, it doesn't change the fact that I don't want that behavior out of the FBI. Or this dude did take a shot at him. Or this dude came at him with a knife or some other wacky thing. We have to know about that as well. Because this guy was Larry Hogan's chief of staff. And we should be informed about who's running what in this country. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, good morning. Good morning to you, Foxy. Folks, if you are enjoying the stream, if you're watching right now, you find it interesting, give us a like. It's highly appreciated. And feel free to say hi. We are, of course, on the stream before the stream where Trump is going to be arraigned. Oh, it feels good to say. Good Lord, it feels it feels right. Fortunately, we don't even have to wait. We don't even have to wait to get Trump confessions. Get to get progress against Trump made in a court of law. Because he's doing it himself for free, unprompted. In fact, while Sean Hannity is desperately begging him not to, he's incriminating himself. Here's Donald Trump taking the egg, cracking it, and then just putting it right on his face. It's delightful. Let's watch him dig himself deeper with Sean Hannity, brought to you by Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, and they constantly put out Willie Geist.
So there are other legal cases that Donald Trump is dealing with, including the documents issue, the Mar-a-Lago documents, and there are new developments this week that Donald Trump might have participated in possible obstruction with some of those materials that were at Mar-a-Lago. During an interview with Fox News last week, Donald Trump was asked whether he would personally look through boxes of documents from his presidency while they were stored at Mar-a-Lago. Here's his response last week.
I can't imagine you ever saying, bring me some of the boxes that we brought back from the White House. I'd like to look at them. Did you ever do that?
I would have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
But I know you. I don't think you would do it.
Well, I don't have a lot of time, but I would have the right to do that. I would do that. There'd be
All right, let me move on.
Jesus Christ. Oh, God. We're going to play that bit again. I'm sorry, y'all. No. We have to. We have to.
You know, this is something that obviously we believe is a political persecution, and I think people on both sides of the aisle.
That's a little hint as to what's coming up. Yeah, come on. Hannity is begging Trump. It's not only softball. It's like T-ball. He's showing him exactly what to do. And he's giving him every opportunity to say just the simplest thing. Like, no, of course I wouldn't do that. I mean, look, let's not be totally underestimating Trump here. Why would Trump not just take that softball? Why would he do that? Because he's about to go to court over this, it would seem. He's going to go to court over this. It is going to be revealed whether he did or didn't do this thing. He's not going to be able to, again, switch gears. And then they play that Hannity interview where he says, I didn't take him. Of course I wouldn't do that. And then it shows, yeah, he did. He's got to stick with that effed up logic so that the story doesn't change, so that the defense of his people, or the defense his people will shout out, doesn't change. So, in other words, Hannity has reached the point where you can't stay in the realm of the sane and defend this guy. You can't agree that the existing laws we have on the books need to be followed and defend this guy. So that sweaty orange, all I can say is leather sock, I guess. That right there is between a rock and a hard place. He's got Hannity saying, you wouldn't do that now, and Trump saying, no, you dummy, I did do it. And we need to spin this a hell of a lot. And he doesn't let it go. And the result is he pretty much confesses on television.
Remember this. Yeah. This is the Presidential Records Act.
And Hannity goes, okay, so we move on. And then he just does not move on. Ugh.
I have the right to take stuff. Do you know that they ended up paying Richard Nixon, I think, $18 million for what he had? They did the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff.
Wait a minute. Presidential Records Act, yeah, in response to that thing he's talking about. And they paid Richard Nixon's estate $18 million after, to compensate for the fact, for the manner in which they took back the documents Nixon stole. That's what happened. It wasn't like, all right, we're going to take Trump's literal interpretation of that in a moment and game that out. Because no matter what he said just there is disgusting. But what actually happened was Richard Nixon held on to a bunch of the people's documents, and the government said, what? No, we're taking those back. And he said, well, you can't have them. And the government said, okay, move aside. We're taking these back. And then after they took them back, Nixon's estate, much later, sued the government, and they believe they settled for $18 million or something, or whatever he said. Whatever it was, I should say. And it was over the government saying, get out of here. Just the manner in which they took them back. But let's imagine that what Trump says is accurate, and that the picture he painted is accurate, and that Richard Nixon went through the White House, took a bunch of documents, and then the government later was like, oh, he got some good ones. We got to buy him back. What's he asking for? He's asking for $25 million. Can we get him down to 10? Maybe, all right, 10's ambitious. Maybe we can get him down a little bit in the teens, high teens. Can't pay 25. Let's negotiate with the guy. We'll open up negotiations. Get a good salesman, and we'll open up negotiations. That's what Trump's implying happened, and what he's implying was happening with the documents he took. So he's suggesting that an American president, as part of the perks of their presidency, at the end they can be like, all right, fellas, well, crack open the national security documents. Let's see what I can fit in a U-Haul. Some of this stuff's looking valuable. Oh, nuclear secrets for sure. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly, but I'm equally sure government's going to pay for those. Dirt on foreign leaders. Yes, please. In my file folders, in the moving box, in the U-Haul. Okay, what will the government really need to pay me for? I am looting the White House. That's what he is suggesting. That's how he's suggesting that this works. If that was how it worked, we should give a beating to all of our presidents, just on general principle. All of them, Republican and Democrat, just not even out of anger, just general principle. Hiding to all of them. A proper caning, let's say, a belting at the very least. Because they will have earned it for not having changed that rule, and then we should change that rule. But that's not the rule. I'm going to let him go for a while because he's digging his own hole, and I'm going to have an aneurysm before I even see this guy appear in court, for God's sake.
I have the right to look at stuff.
Willie.
You do?
Willie. Sean was tried to help.
You're allowed to take stuff?
Meatball Don. He was trying. Oh, wait, that's Meatball Ron. Sean was trying to help Trump time and again. Okay, but I know you wouldn't do that. Sure, I would. Okay, let's move. And then he goes, let's move on. Yeah. And he's like, no, I want to completely prove the federal government's case. And then he goes,
I'm sorry, it's just they have it wrong. They've got a funny take, and it's I love it. But let's be clear, they're not reading between the lines correctly. What happened was Sean Hannity was saying, but you wouldn't do that. Just say you wouldn't do that. Yeah, that part they have right. Sean Hannity was trying to help him out desperately. But it's not that he's too dumb. He is dumb, but that's not why he did that. Call it correctly. Why was he doing that? Because he knows in short order we're going to see exactly what he did. In fact, I think since that interview it came out that he personally went through the documents. Oh boy. And withheld some is the point. So what happened? What we just saw was Sean Hannity saying, okay, you didn't do that, right? That's the framing we're going with. And Trump saying, no, you idiot, no. At the point, the thing we're trying to say is that I'm allowed to do that. And he didn't say, I did do that. He just was like, I could do that. Remember that I'm allowed to do that. Sean, remember I can do that. Because he did it. But he's not really allowed to do it. He broke the law. It would seem. This dude is actually gonna have the book. I don't know. I've never seen a U.S. president in court before. But if they follow the same justice system, after all, then the book is going to be fastballed at his skull.
Sean improves the federal government's case, which of course
You're not allowed to take stuff.
More relevant now, Willie, after the Washington Post story that broke this weekend.
If you're the prosecutor or the special counsel in this case, it's just clip and save these interviews. Clip and save. Some of it amounting to a partial confession. Remember, it was last September in a different interview with Sean Hannity when Donald Trump said you can declassify documents just by thinking about them. As former president of the United States, if he thought about them being declassified, then they in fact would be declassified. We should ask Chuck Rosenberg, as a former prosecutor himself, if you are the special counsel, if you are Jack Smith, what are you making of these interviews that Donald Trump is giving again, especially the ones to Sean Hannity?
You know, I was thinking, Willie, about when I was a federal prosecutor preparing for trial, I would literally have a manila folder, which I would label my cross-examination file. And every time I found a document or someone said something or something that I thought could be useful, I'd put it in that file. The file here would be enormous. I mean, as prosecutors, we collect stuff, we hold on to stuff, we never know exactly when we're going to need stuff. But Mr. Trump, from a prosecutor's perspective, if you're preparing for cross-examination, is a gift that keeps on giving. And so they're going to have a lot of information, a lot of clips, a lot of the things he's said to choose from. Whether or not he gets on the stand, whether or not they ever get to use it, we'll save that question for another day. But prosecutors are always collecting a cross-examination file, and Mr. Trump can't help himself.
I wish I had some of my cohorts with me now that I have a sheet of like ambitions for this network. And those ambitions are just people I intend to hire. They're people I came across in the news industry that at some point, if I ever get the ability, I'm going to make a job offer to. I wish I had them with me now, because I would love to do a bit where we do an impression of the prosecutors every time Trump incriminates himself, just does their case, just does the work of trying their case for them by talking in front of a camera. It's amazing. It's got to just be like high fives and laughing and falling on each other, drinking, party hat tipped to the side. Good Lord.
Always talks about Mr. Trump, and that just makes the file bigger and bigger and bigger.
He just can't help himself. And I want us to play this clip again because, again, in light of the Washington Post reporting this weekend, it becomes even more relevant. Let's play this clip again in case you all will, first of all, miss Donald Trump's confession, and two, miss Sean Hannity trying to move him along, and he just wouldn't do it because he was like going, no, I like my hand on the hot stove so much. I'm going to put the other hand on the hot stove. Run it, TJ.
I can't imagine you ever saying, bring me some of the boxes that we brought back from the White House. I'd like to look at them. Did you ever do that?
I would have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
But I know you. I don't think you would do it.
Well, I don't have a lot of time, but I would have the right to do that. I would do that. There'd be
All right, let me move on.
Remember this.
Yeah.
This is the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff. Do you know that they ended up paying Richard Nixon, I think, $18 million for what he had? They did the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff. I have the right to look at stuff.
I have the right to take stuff and look at stuff even after, as the Washington Post suggests, federal investigators and the feds try to get him back. And federal investigators, the Post reports, have new and significant evidence which shows that after the subpoena was delivered, Trump was rummaging through boxes of the documents in his home because, Elise, he wanted to keep certain things in his possession that the federal government said he had to return to them.
And, Joe, this is where Donald Trump could really get in trouble because that's obstruction.
Right.
And he differentiates himself from other former officials who might have a claim of inadvertently removing classified documents and having classified documents in their personal possession by the fact that he doesn't make good and make amends, and he continues to try to obstruct the government's case. And so you have this case happening in New York City, which one Republican operative called the Mickey Mouse paperwork case. But then you've got the classified document case and how Donald Trump has taken it possibly to the next level if he hasn't been forthright with investigators. And then from there, also you've got Georgia and then E. Jean Carroll next month. So while today is a big deal, there's plenty of other legal action to watch with Donald Trump.
And Joe, people I talked to in Trump's orbit in recent days, offer sort of two sides to how they feel about Manhattan. Yes, they think this could be a short-term political benefit for Trump. They also acknowledge that, of course, Trump doesn't really want to be indicted. No one does. He's concerned. He spent his whole life trying to avoid criminal prosecution. Here it is. But they also acknowledge they feel like this is a matter that can be dealt with. They think more legal peril lies elsewhere. And certainly the two that they say to me they're most worried about, Georgia, which we expect we'll hear about in about a month's time, and then this one here, because, yes, it's about the differences between how Joe Biden and Mike Pence handled their classified document matters and this one. They cooperated. They returned the documents. Donald Trump did not. And they feel like there's a real vulnerability here for obstruction. And Jack Smith seems to be working his way up, in his investigation and closing in, although perhaps he could save the taxpayers' money and time by just DVRing Fox News and therefore present his case to the grand jury.
Right. You've got.
Okay, hold up a second. I honestly think that Donald Trump, when we look back on this point in time, and what do they say? Any feelings you may have for me, any feelings of respect or admiration, buttress them. Because Donald Trump, buttress him, may be looked at as the man who saved America. Truly. I believe he will be looked at. In fact, I think that's, he's going to be the man that saved America. Can you imagine if somebody would have done the same crimes that Donald Trump did, but had just a little bit of sense, like was just a little bit intelligent? They wouldn't be caught for any of them. I mean, we've already had this demonstrated. George W. Bush got 7,000 of our sons and daughters killed. No punishment. Got the country into a war that messed up the planet for decades. No punishment. It took someone as blatant and crude and obvious as Donald Trump to force the Justice Department to take action because he was embarrassing us. He was such an obvious crook that it was an embarrassment to us. And we had no choice. He literally did what he said he would do. In 2016, he fulfilled the purpose he set out to do, or he said that he set out to do. Ironically, because he wasn't trying to. He was trying very hard not to, as a matter of fact. It's amazing. It's like, it's poetic, almost. He exposed the corruption of the United States. Look how difficult it's been to get this guy into a courtroom. Look at how blatant it had to be. Look, the important thing is going to be for us to not forget this is the state of our government. We need, as a culture, and I think we have, by the way, but we need to make sure this sticks. As a culture, we need to remember this is how our government works. This is how ineffectual they are. This is how hesitant they are to hold a powerful person to account. We need to fundamentally change that. Obviously, you do that by voting blue and voting in primaries. But credit where it's due, or even one might say discredit where it's due. Donald Trump may have saved the country just by being so corrupt, so blatantly a criminal that we could not ignore United States president's criminality anymore.
Your confession, you don't need depositions, you don't need interrogatories, just DVR Fox News at night whenever Trump talks, and you're in good shape. Chuck, I'm curious if you agree with those on the inside that Jonathan Lemire has talked to. Of course, understanding that we still don't know what D.A. Bragg has. We have now, everybody's been talking about this indictment being strong or weak. being an embarrassment or being a final call to justice. We have no idea what this is going to be. So we lay that on the table right now, just like we don't know exactly what Georgia's going to be, but we have an idea. Same thing with the documents case. Still looking at these things, do you agree with the assessment not only of people inside Trump world, but also with a lot of legal analysts, that right now he seems, from the fact patterns that are laid before us in the media, incomplete, but the fact patterns laid before us in the media and the law in these jurisdictions, relevant jurisdictions, that the Georgia case and the documents case, particularly on the obstruction of returning the documents, seem to be the two cases that could provide Donald Trump the gravest legal peril.
Yeah, I think that's right, Joe. And remember, with respect to the documents case, when the FBI executed the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, they went forward on 3 predicate offenses. One of them at the time was obstruction, right? So the FBI had enough information at the time to include in the affidavit their concerns about obstruction. And as a prosecutor, that's something we always look for. First, because it's illegal, but second, because it also evinces a consciousness of guilt. There's no reason to move stuff or destroy stuff or hide stuff or counsel people not to tell the truth if you haven't done anything wrong.
I so rarely hear folks talking about this. Obstruction of justice, as they said with Nixon, the cover-up is worse than the crime. Often that's the case with obstruction of justice. In fact, often with Trump, that's the case. I don't know of an investigation he's been involved with that he didn't try to obstruct in some way. But there's that other part to it. Why? Why do you obstruct justice? But you don't necessarily have to have done the thing in order to obstruct the investigation. That's true. Not necessarily. But normally you did. It's pretty strong evidence. If you have been unfaithful to let's not even bring spouses into it. Let's keep it with jobs. Let's say you are looking for a job elsewhere, and your boss says, "Hey, can I look at your received emails?" And you say, "Actually, that's terrible. You should have privacy from your boss." Anyway, the point is, there's a reason he doesn't want terrible analogies, utter train wreck. But there's a reason he didn't want people looking at these cases. It's not just that he doesn't like being investigated. Come on. He's habitually in trouble with the law, and he's habitually getting in investigators' way. That's going to be brought up in court. All right, that's all up there. But just underlining what this man is saying. It's yes, you have to presume innocence and all that other stuff, but you're still allowed to have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a mostly functional brain. Why is this guy doing this thing? Well, it ain't because he's lawful. Good God.
And so if you're trying to turn a weak case into a strong case for the government, obstructing justice is one way of doing that. So I agree generally that the case in New York seems less important. That doesn't make it weak. And I know that's something that Mika and I talked about a couple of days ago.
And I don't agree that it's less important, but we move on.
It's not necessarily a weak case. The evidence could be compelling. It could be corroborated. There could be a lot of it. But in terms of charges, it's less serious. How do we know that? Well, for one, the underlying offense, and we'll see whether or not Mr. Bragg actually charges it, is a misdemeanor. By classification, a relatively low-level crime. If we see felony charges, and I expect we will, they'll probably be Class E felonies under New York state law. Again, a relatively low classification of felony. Doesn't mean these charges don't matter. It doesn't mean he won't be held to account. But I agree generally, Joe, with your supposition that the cases in Georgia and the cases under investigation by Jack Smith as special counsel are probably weightier.
All right, so that's just semantics. Weightier. The These are all important. They are all of the utmost importance because they all involve criminality and, frankly, corruption within our government. What can you do? Folks, vote. For God's sake. God's sake. Vote in primary. And end the madness in general by just voting blue in 2024. There is not a reasonable alternative to the Democrats. I think America sees that. There's not a reasonable alternative to the Democrats. The GOP and MAGA, the combined forces that make the Republican Party, they're no good for running anything. No reasonable person is going to look at this and be like, well, Trump does have a point. He did stamp his feet and get red-faced and say, but I want him, I want him, I want him. Not going to happen. So the actual election is going to be the primaries. And it doesn't mean that we can sit on our hands when it comes to the general. I think it's a fight we're going to win. It doesn't mean we don't have to try. We'll lose it if we do another 2016. Where we're like, yeah, so Trump's lost. It ain't even about Trump anymore. We have work to do. Serious work to do. We need someone in the White House who we can push. That's Joe Biden. And then we need to give that person the tools that make it possible to do good legislation. But for Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, we are, child poverty would still be down by, 40%? We got to get serious with this stuff. The time has come. Global warming has arrived in the way that has been warned about. We're not trusted on a international level. People will continue dying in Ukraine. Putin will continue being a murderer who pushes propaganda and tries to start civil wars. We need to make sure that we've got a Democrat president in the White House and that they have a House and Senate which can pass bills easily. And we got to get to work. So, be prepared to vote blue in 2024. And remember, the main contests are going to be in the primaries. And it will be easier for us generally, both during the election, I feel, but certainly after the election, if you get very left-leaning folks. Look at some of these comments. Oh, Franny P., Catherine Wolf, good to see you. Paul Atkinson, good to see you, sir. Happy Arraignment Day to those who celebrate. And Franny P. says, Merry Arraignment, everyone. Yeah. Oh, I do like that. For those who celebrate. Yes, I'm a practicing fan of democracy, so I'm celebrating this arraignment day. I have my arraignment poll set up. Very nice. No, it's not just Steel Festivus entirely. I have my arraignment water cooler set up. There we go. An arraignment water cooler is just a water cooler with Christmas lights wrapped around it. Oh, that's delightful. Well done. That's a good one. All right, I had the briefest of looks at this. I would love your input as well. Brian Tyler Cohen recently talked a little bit about, it's just sticking with Trump for a moment here, the threats he made against the prosecutor's wife. Let's just let the man introduce it. I've got some thoughts.
You know, this is something that obviously we believe is a political persecution, and I think people on both sides of the aisle believe that.
That's the wrong thing. Take another whack at this. Nope. Good Lord. It's live, folks. All right, let's try this again.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, Trump reposted onto Truth Social a swipe against Alvin Bragg's wife. That's the Manhattan District Attorney. Now, he did this as he's awaiting arraignment in a trial being prosecuted by Alvin Bragg. So what impact could this have, and is it more likely that we could see a gag order against Trump now?
Yeah, you know, this is really interesting, and it's getting into dangerous territory because when you look at these reposts, right, a journalist found some information about Alvin Bragg's wife posting that, you know, Donald Trump is a racist, Donald Trump should be held accountable for his crimes, not exactly, you know, late breaking news to anyone.
Right.
But after the reporter posted this information about Bragg's wife, Donald Trump started reposting it. Now, there's nothing in it in and of itself that would constitute a threat or that arguably would be improper. But we know Donald Trump's MO. He starts to put names in the public square, and the signal he is sending is that this person is a problem to me. What does that inspire some of his followers, you know, the least among his followers to do? Well, we know it can incite them to violence. So he knows what he's doing. He hasn't done anything that is directly actionable yet. But boy, he's sending that dangerous signal. And, you know, he's got priors. He's done this kind of thing before.
Point of contention. And do bear in mind, I really like to qualify this. A lot of folks that have these opinion shows, in fact, a lot of the folks that I poll that have these opinion shows, have a good reason for their opinion. And I often talk about my qualifications, not so that I can say, look at this impressive thing that I've done, but so that you never can say that I lied to you, or that I would presume to be, to actually think that you should take my word over Glenn Kirshner's. But, because I feel this, it's an observation I've made, I'd like your thoughts on this. A lot of this stuff seems like the sort of thing that ought to be prosecuted. And everybody says, oh, it's close to the line. And then the authorities actually say, we're going to call that over the line. And everybody goes, yeah, that makes sense. Glenn Kirshner, I'm sorry, I'll do a more respectful freeze frame here. Glenn Kirshner is saying, hey, I don't think he's quite crossed the line yet. What? Man, come on. Putting a prosecutor's family in the spotlight like that, that's not a violation of something? Come on. Look, here's what's important to remember with all of this Trump stuff, all of it. That when a judge looks at this and makes a decision, it's not a matter of debate whether the law applies to Donald Trump. It's treated like that all the time. Does the law apply to Donald? It's not. That's not up for debate. What the judge is deciding is whether what Donald Trump is doing is a violation of the law. If Donald Trump gets away with this, no one can be held accountable for threatening the family of the person prosecuting them or bad-mouthing their judge during a trial. That includes rapists, spousal abusers. My God, let's try that again. That includes rapists, spousal abusers, celebrities, politicians, cult leaders, mobsters, morons, and people other than Trump. It's just, we have to take this seriously. And I can't imagine how you include the spouse of the person prosecuting you in your rantings online, and you don't get some sort of a punishment, some sort of a worsening of your situation for that behavior, because that behavior by itself, from this old chunk of coal's humble perspective, is a problem and shouldn't be allowed.
Directly actionable yet, but boy, he's sending that dangerous signal. And he's got priors. He's done this kind of thing before. So I think all of this now may become sort of fodder for discussion at Donald Trump's first court appearance.
How does this work in the sense that what he did may not in and of itself be a crime, but how do the circumstances play into this? Is there some degree of circumstantial evidence that could show that what he was trying to do by virtue of doing something that's not necessarily in and of itself a crime, but where the intention is to cause her violence? Does that have any impact here?
The First Amendment does come into play here, right? The First Amendment protections are broad, are sweeping, and that's precisely the way we want them to be. The problem is when you have a guy like Trump who has demonstrated a pattern, throw names into the public square, hoping that it inspires something that will then inure to his benefit, and may inure to the danger of the person he's naming, it becomes a really murky area. What can a judge do to try to push back, or perhaps put a gag order in place to direct a defendant, stop posting about the prosecutor's family? I think that's fair game, even though I'll tell you, Brian, in my 30 years, I never encountered this kind of stuff that we're now seeing with Donald Trump.
Oh my gosh, do we really have a troll? You guys are right. Oh, I'll tell you, that is a sign, indeed. Oh, please tell me they're trying to sell pills of some sort. Oh, I'll look at it in a moment. Oh, that's just flattering. Hi, troll, if you're there. I'm just so excited to have you. I'm probably gonna boot your ass in a moment, but hey, and come by for Friday Peace Talks. We've got things to talk about. All right, back to the degradation of democracy.
Certainly, I never encountered it with a public official like Donald Trump. There were circumstances when we thought people were saying some things that might endanger a witness in the case, but this is Donald Trump taking it to a whole nother level. So, I think this arraignment hearing coming up for Trump is going to be unlike one we've ever seen before because of the novel issues that the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the judge are going to have to wrestle with.
Well, with that said, you mentioned the judge in this case. Donald Trump also attacked the judge online. What impact could that have then?
Yeah, this is a really interesting development because Donald Trump posted something about Judge Marchand, who is the presiding judge. In his case, he was also the presiding judge in the criminal prosecution of the Trump Organization, a case in which Alan Weisselberg, Donald Trump's chief financial officer, testified for the prosecution, even though Alan Weisselberg was no friend of the prosecution. He kind of had 1 foot in the DA's office and 1 foot in the Trump Organization. So Donald Trump posted about Judge Marchand the following. He said, Judge Marchand hates me. That's obviously a lie. He said Alvin Bragg handpicked Judge Marchand to be the presiding judge in Trump's criminal prosecution. That's a lie. That's not the way judges are assigned to cases.
Yeah.
And he said, and Judge Marchand railroaded Alan Weisselberg, my chief financial officer, into pleading guilty by basically threatening him. Again, another lie.
Threatening him by saying, we're going to talk about this in court one way or another. And if you can't prove that you didn't do this thing that it looks like you did, we're going to take the fact that you made us fight you over it into account. Also known as just presenting the facts. What are you talking about, Donald Trump? Oh, good God. This time is going to be much funnier in retrospect. Like, we're going to get so many wonderful comedies that are set in the 2010s and 2020s. It's going to be amazing. It's freaking terrifying right now. It's like having a methed out clown at the controls to the roller coaster. Like, okay, it's terrifying right now, but if we make it through this, some crazy how, Jesus Christ. And by the way, we're going to get just ruthlessly made fun of that this is what it took for us to get ourselves under control. This is how bad it had to get. This is rock bottom for America, folks. Like, this is us waking up with the near empty whiskey bottle cradled against us, covered in our own sick in an alley. It's not a good place. But fortunately, we take this wake-up call to, get just a little bit woke about what we are.
So I am certain this is going to become the topic of discussion at Donald Trump's arraignment. You cannot make these wild, outrageous lies, throw them into the public square, and hope that they sort of blow up and poison the jury well. So there's something called recusal, right? When a judge has an interest in a case, he or she is supposed to recuse themselves, remove themselves from the case.
No,
if you have, for example, a family member involved in a case, well, then you as the judge can't preside over that case. If you have a financial interest involving one of the parties in the case, the judge can't preside over.
I don't think this is where he's going. Just to be clear up front, while he does the wind up to the point he's making, you don't get to pick your judge, though. You don't get to say, like, the judge is an a-hole. That judge can't give me a fair trial. They know that I called him an a-hole. That's crazy.
That kind of a case. It feels like Donald Trump is trying to tell so many inflammatory lies about Judge Marchand that he's hoping maybe Judge Marchand will remove himself, will have to recuse from the case. But here's the thing. Defendants don't get to orchestrate their judge.
Yeah.
Think about it. If a defendant could make outrageous lies about a judge and then that judge was ethically obligated to remove himself from the case and have a new judge appointed, well, wouldn't that just inspire defendants to engage in precisely this kind of conduct?
Which makes it a really bad idea to poke that particular bear. I can't stress enough. Really bad idea to mouth off to the judge who's in charge of your fate soon.
But here's what it might do, Brian. I think these lies, this disinformation, this propaganda, really designed to turn the people against Judge Marchand and against the prosecution, I think ups the ante that Judge Marchand will impose a gag order, will impose some kind of a narrowly tailored set of restrictions, the do's and don'ts of Donald Trump's speech and Donald Trump's posts.
The real question for me, not even, the real question for me is, will the judge actually have, and this, by the way, all right, let me give this the proper, we're laughing, but let me give it the proper seriousness that it requires, because this is what it's going to come down to. Does the judge have the guts to enforce the gag order? It's not a question of whether or not he needs one. And if he isn't given one, then a gag order means nothing. We shouldn't have them at all. They exist for, if Donald Trump doesn't get a gag order, then gag orders exist only to bully people who aren't powerful. Because he's asking for it. Beyond that, the real question is, what's going to happen when he violates it? Does anybody have any doubt at all that he's going to violate it? Of course he's going to violate it. I'll put a crisp American dollar on that particular event happening. It's going to happen. So, will the judge have the courage, the decency, the interest in justice to enforce it? Are they going to do a serious enforcement? $1,000 fine means nothing to Trump, and the judge doesn't need to learn that. If Donald Trump does a gag order, or has a gag order, violates the gag order, the judge does their warning shot of $1,000 fine. Then Trump violates it again. There's the question. That second time, what's the judge going to do? Are they going to have the guts to say, okay, well, it was $1,000 or 30 days in jail. I gave you the free shot, charged you $1,000, which is nothing to you. You've demonstrated that you don't respect the court. You've demonstrated that you don't respect me. You've demonstrated that you don't respect American law. And so you gonna learn. Here's a jail cell, Mr. Trump, where you do not have access to your cellular phone. Enjoy. That will have to happen. So write it down right now. Let's see if your old pal Jake is right. Gag order has to come. The only reason to avoid it is because the judge chickens out and is afraid of that second time Donald Trump violates it. Gag order has to happen. Donald Trump is not going to respect it. Donald Trump speaks out. Then we have our next test of democracy. Does the judge call him for violating the gag order? When they do, you know they're going to go easy on him first time through, and they're going to say, here's the $1,000 fine. When he violates it again, because now, as we've seen, unless they get a serious punishment, they don't take things seriously. The principle means nothing to them. So that second time, the second time Donald Trump, who has threatened the prosecutor and the judge and the prosecutor's wife, the second time he violates that gag order, does the judge have the courage to put him in a jail cell? If not, we don't have to respect the law in this country. That's what the judge is saying. I don't think that's true, but I think we all have to respect the law, including Donald Trump. And I hope the judge holds him to that standard. Let's let my man Glenn, who's clearly doubting me here, do a thumbnail. It's your problem. Let's let him finish up.
Frankly, think it's essential at this point, because if you let it go unaddressed, the way we've let so many other things Donald Trump has done go unaddressed, it's going to get worse, more inflammatory, more inciting, and more dangerous.
Well, that of course raises the question, what happens if and when Donald Trump breaks any gag order that was imposed upon him? What are the consequences of that?
So the judge better not flinch. When a judge sets conditions for a defendant and the defendant intentionally violates.
Just chiming in to acknowledge that I should always let Glenn Kirshner talk for 30 seconds longer than I think he's going to talk for. Because, of course, he knocks it out of the park.
Those conditions, the judge has every right, indeed every responsibility, to then ratchet up the conditions. And the ultimate in a pretrial condition is pretrial detention, jailing a defendant pending trial because the defendant has proved they're unwilling to comply with lesser restrictions designed to promote public safety and give the people a right to a fair trial. Now, listen, a defendant does not have a right to poison the jury pool because the defendant has a right to a fair trial, but the people also have a right to a fair trial.
Okay, now I want to skip ahead a little bit here, and this is a question that I've been throwing around with myself, and it's skipping a bunch of steps, but game this one out with me. What happens if Trump is incarcerated at any point in this process, not necessarily just for the Manhattan DA's case, but just in any of these cases that are bearing down on him? What happens with the Secret Service? Like if Trump is incarcerated, given that they have to be with him at all times, do they get locked up with him?
You know, it's a great question. And the thing is, because it's unprecedented, because these are uncharted waters, no one can answer that question definitively. Now, I've poked around with some of my friends at the Bureau of Prisons and the U.S. Marshal Service, and here is the best answer that I can come up with. And I think it's a leading contender. So, you know, I put a lot of defendants in secure confinement facilities because they were cooperators. You know, I had a hitman who killed 7 people for a criminal organization, and that hitman flipped. and testified for us. And we had to keep that hitman safe pending trial, but we obviously...
Jesus Christ. Sorry to take the Lord's name in vain there.
Also,
as my old teachers would have said, genuinely sorry for blasphemy. But I forget that Glenn Kirshner is a proper professional. Good Lord. And yes, I have no idea regarding the Secret Service. Let's let him talk.
Had to keep that hitman locked up. So there are facilities, I won't name them or say where they are. There are facilities in the United States that are designed to house only cooperating witnesses, where, somebody who is in extreme danger because of the assistance he's providing to the government can also be confined safely.
But if you're putting Trump in one of those, wouldn't he be running into the very people that inevitably there's going to be people that cooperate against him down the line? I'm going to let him finish.
There's no reason that can't be done for Donald Trump. I could envision if a former president of the United States is ordered confined, is sentenced to prison, I could see them actually housing him in one of these facilities and housing only him, keeping all other inmates in other facilities. Here's the other thing that I've learned in talking with.
But is that then solitary confinement? These are weird questions, man. Things I never thought in my wildest dreams we'd be talking about.
Some of my colleagues and former colleagues at the Bureau of Prisons and the Marshal Service, it may very well be that the Secret Service will enter into a memorandum of understanding with BOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the U.S. Marshal Service, which is the agency that handles long-term witness protection issues, to turn over the security detail and the security duties of a former president from the Secret Service to the BOP and the U.S. Marshals, and arrange for this unprecedented situation to be handled that way.
But if he's literally alone, I don't know. I just feel like as strange as this is, what he's saying makes sense to me. Like the guy could wind up in a facility that is there just for him. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I don't care that it's extremely expensive. I want fair treatment of all prisoners, even ones I hate. That's what makes it a principle. But man, I mean, solitary was cruel and unusual when it was done to Michael Cohen. Doesn't make it any different if it's done to Trump. I genuinely don't know how that goes. If you don't have, for example, even his Secret Service with him, maybe that's why the Secret Service stays with him. But then by virtue of your job, I mean, that's hitting capitalism too much, too accurately. Really, literally showing that your job is to go check into prison.
Got it. Because the flip side of that is, like, imagine being the poor sucker who spent his whole life working his way up to be on the presidential detail in the Secret Service, and you end up sitting in a prison cell with the guy because he couldn't not commit crimes.
Not going to happen. They are not going to subject Secret Service officers to, 8-hour shifts in a Federal Bureau of Prisons facility. I do not see that happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, obviously that's something that we'll keep a close eye on. For anybody watching, to keep on top of all of this legal news, whether it's in the Manhattan DA's case or any other case that we're...
Wild times, y'all. Wild times. Well, I might take a whack at combing my hair. I will see you guys. I will see y'all for the live stream that we do in just a couple of hours. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm gonna watch the Majority Report, and then at 2:15, we've got the arraignment of Donald Trump. I will be here. We're gonna start the stream a little bit early. I think like 1:45, and we're just gonna be live streaming this puppy. So I hope you'll come back, join me for that. And oh my God, my dog is barking at Jake, says Wicked Foxy Dragon. Who's a good pup? Who's a good puppy? Oh, you good puppy dog. There you go. Hopefully I chilled him out a little bit. What's the dog's name? Let's mess with him just a little bit. I'll call them a good boy or girl. Let's read some of these comments. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, Trump is a gag played on Murica. Oh, yeah, 100%. Ryrie says, or possibly Rye, Rhode Island, says, you would think they would have come up with that contingency, especially after Nixon. Yeah. It's wild to me that that's really not something I'm even aware of what the plan would be. I'm afraid that John McDonough says, I'm afraid that will have to happen. Issue a fine, second warning. Oh, yeah. Then 8 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours to demand defendant stop certain behaviors. Yeah, that's true. He doesn't necessarily have to be given the full 30 days in jail. They might give him like 10 hours in jail or something like that. And honestly, with a guy as soft as Donald Trump, that might be sufficient. Mars Falcon says the Donald John Trump Memorial Incarceration Center, Buffalo, New York, construction underway. Oh, Lordy, yes. Oh, eating it up. Delicious. John McDonough says the whole Trump thing, how he acts outrageously, his followers, especially in Congress, support it, just turns my stomach. Yeah, it's hard to watch sometimes. Oh, no. Wicked Foxy Dragon says the crazy thing is, that is crazy. She stopped talking when Brian started talking. This is very strange. All right, your dog has garbage taste. I'm just going to say it. They're a terrible taste in their preference for talking heads. No, I take it back. I will take the pupper's opinion into account. Maybe Wicked Foxy Dragon says, oh my God, her name is Zoe. Hey, Zoe. Zoe? Hey, girl. Listen, who's your good girl, Zoe? Who's your good girl? All right, hopefully. Now I just won her over. You good girl, Zoe. Come on, with your Brian Tyler Cohen favoring. Pup was in agreement with the hair combing comment. Pup understands appearance maintenance is an important component of self-care. Well, there it is. You're right. Fair enough. Well, I'm going to go get to that hair combing then. We're going to be back later on for the arraignment of Donald Trump. Congratulations to everybody that was pushing for equal justice in the United States, to everybody that voted in the representatives necessary to insist on it. A big part of what makes it difficult to keep the energy up is remembering what we did to get here. And collectively, Americans that support decency are the reason why we don't have yet another criminal president getting away with it. I am no longer in the New York case. I'm no longer going to be pushing for anything in particular. That we just watch. Unless and until Donald Trump digs himself deeper with more of his shenanigans, such as threatening the people involved. We'll see. We'll be here for it. Hope to see you later today. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Thanks for joining me today. My name's Jake.